Hi guys, welcome back. So today I'm going to be sharing with you how you can outline your entire novel just by using what is called the 3-act story structure. If you would like to know how you can be using the 3-act story structure and to get an overview of it, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Be sure and give this video a big thumbs up if you are enjoying these writing videos on my channel, and be sure and hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any more writing related videos here on my channel, and be sure and turn on that bell icon so that way you will get notified when a new video is uploaded. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Every writer needs to know that creating a worthy outline highlights the major events and themes that you want to portray in your plot. This is where the 3-act story structure has proved itself to drive the plot of a story just by highlighting different key moments within each act. This means that it divides the story into 3 acts: the setup, the confrontation, and the resolution. All readers need to know this. The number one thing that you start out with in any novel is the hook. This starts the moment, the first words. The first words literally hook your readers into the story. You're basically wanting to grab your reader's attention. You're introducing your protagonist to your readers in the first few sentences, which is grouping them with an engaging and multi-dimensional character. One important thing is that your readers usually connect with the first character they're introduced, so you need to make sure your reader engages with your protagonist, because the protagonist is the main character. This is where you need to introduce the regular world. In other words, you've engaged your reader and you've given them a reason to keep on reading. This is the time to introduce them to your protagonist's world. Introducing the main world of your protagonist by including the main cast of characters. You want to introduce the main world of your protagonists and including a main cast of other characters that your readers will engage with throughout the whole story as they're reading. You need to focus on the internal conflict, the thoughtful dialogue, and the immersive writing to show and engross your readers into the story. Next is the inciting incident, and this plunges your characters into the journey that they're about to embark on. I mean, something happens. Whether it's big or small, something happens. Every story has a conflict. Because like I've mentioned before, no conflict, no story. If you don't have a conflict, you don't have a plot. In other words, you don't have a story if you don't have a conflict. This is the event that plunges the protagonist into the story, but it's not entirely what makes them involved in the story. Yet. There's often some back and forth from the protagonist where they're trying to decide what they should do. So there's still a chance that maybe they don't have to embark on their journey. I mean, that's what makes the readers curious, like whether they will embark on their journey or not. Next is the key event. This not only pushes the protagonist along their storyline, but it's when the readers see the protagonist take part in the story itself. It often forces the protagonist to engage with their support characters and or their antagonist, but they're still wrestling with their desire versus the lie your character still believes. The first plot point. This is where the protagonist now knows what's at stake. In other words, this is their first real decision to engage with the true story. I mean, this is where the plot of your story starts to take from, and there's no turning back for your protagonist. Like your protagonist can't turn back now. They've made the decision. They can't give up. There's no turning back. Because, I mean, once you do it, you're doing it. This is what plunges your protagonist into the meat of their journey that makes it into the final decision. To begin the second act, you need to enter a whole brand new world. This is where the journey has finally kicked into overdrive after the protagonist realizes their turmoil in Act 1. This is where the protagonist faces challenges they've never seen before and into things they've never had to deal with, or that they've never had to either deal with or had to overcome. In this act, there's often conflict, whether it's internal or external, that the protagonist must work through to preserve. You need to remember that the new world is a time writers often use to refamiliarize the reader with the protagonist, the supporting characters, and the journey that they've just launched themselves into. That is basically what the new world is. Next comes the first plot point. This is where the antagonist reminds your readers why they should take them seriously and why your protagonist should too. And there's often some sort of conflict at this point, which is where your protagonist fails or is forced to retreat and run away. Most importantly, this is what escalates the plot, driving the tension up. If you want it to escalate, then you have the midpoint. This makes a turning point for your protagonist. So this is the one where they can't turn back from. This is a slowdown after the first pinch point, where your characters are forced to retreat, where they try to learn from their mistakes. Most importantly, this is where your protagonist takes control of their story and drives the plot forward towards a resolution. Next is the second pinch point. The second pinch point is likely where a second conflict arises or where your protagonist fails once again. This usually humbles the protagonist a bit, forcing them further into their journey towards the third plot point. The third plot point is where your protagonist feels all hope is lost. In other words, that the antagonist has already won and they're unable to defeat them. This is where the pace of your story tends to speed up as the character hits their low point, but they haven't yet hit their realization. The realization is what drives the story into the third and final act. This often describes the character finding a way in which to trick the antagonist into their weakness. The third act is where the tension builds and is released once they figure out how to defeat their opponent. To start off the third act is the climax. This is all about ramping up the tension, which often ends with a big battle. This is where the tension pushes and the reader is left on the edge of their seats, because this is where we start to see the bubble burst, but it doesn't pop entirely. You need to remember that in the climax, the protagonist and the antagonist are pitted head to head, and the stakes are rising to extreme levels. This is where you give your readers the life or death scenario, where the reader is left wondering whether your protagonist will make it through the entire journey. It's like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next? And next is the climactic moment, where the big thing happens, the decisive moment, the moment your protagonist succeeds or fails to the antagonist. This is the moment where you're asking these questions. Will good defeat evil? Will the rebels defeat the empire? Will the boy get the girl? Whatever the incident that incited the story, this is where the climactic moment will answer the question. Finally comes the resolution. This is always the calm after the storm. It's the sigh of relief after a fierce fight, even if only metaphorically. The readers have been holding their breath on the tips of their toes through the last 20% of your novel, and this is where they can finally release their held breath. This is usually where you end your story, but you might consider taking it a bit further, figuring out how your protagonist goes about living their normal life after everything they've been through. How will they recover from their journey with what they know now? And this usually might also be the time to hint out a sequel. Anyway, the 3-act story structure isn't as daunting as it might seem, but it can also push your novel to be the best version it can. This 3-act story structure can help you stay laser focused on your story's plot. It will definitely come in helpful if you're ever in that situation. I tried to make this as detailed as possible, especially for those who've never heard of the 3-act story structure. I really hope that you would take the time to watch this video and that it will be helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it and you like seeing these little sit down videos with me. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button so you will never miss any more writing related videos here on my channel. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!